Over the last 5 weeks, we've been going through the 12 steps, and as we enter into the 6th week, the 6th step says we are entirely ready to have God remove our defects of character. Dalton, what does that mean to you?
Well, in my addiction, I struggled with being dishonest, and even bleeding into my sobriety, I struggled with being truthful, and it really took away from my experience at being in recovery and being a man of God, and at learning a tough lesson in humility in step 5 prepared me for this step.
That's good. Eric?
What I discovered in my step 5 was one of my main character defects was my jealousy and judgmental. And what I like most about step 6 is that it says that we are ready to have God remove these character defects, not ready to have Eric remove these character defects, or our sponsor, or our mentor, or anybody else, but they have God to rely fully and solely on God to remove these characters. AA says that step 6 is the step that separates the men from the boys, based on our willingness to move on.
What about you, Allison?
Step 6 to me is having that, like Eric said, the willingness and being entirely ready. For me, my addiction and being sober, I've struggled with having low self-worth, and it's really hard to overcome an addiction for me when I feel like I don't have a reason to exist, and asking God and knowing that God's there for me and He is able to remove this defect from me is really powerful.
What about you, Andrew?
Step 6 to me is it's a tough one. I dealt with anger and resentment a lot in my life, and so having the 4th and the 5th step there right before the 6th step was just amazing, because it got all of my resentments put on paper, all of my character defects on paper. 5th step, I admitted it, and then 6th step, I was ready to deal with it, and that's kind of, for me, is where the therapy part of AA or the 12 steps begins. So
that's good. Cammie?
One of my main defects of character was majorly impure on the inside, and I lived, like, you could tell that I was just kind of put together on the outside, but my motives were so bad, all the time. It was like I was living this double life, and I was just sick of me, so I was just ready to give that up. And now it's been like 10 years since I watched TV, even, because I was so impure.
You can see firsthand how these defects of character weigh us down, and tonight we're going to review the 6th step, and I'm extremely excited of the freedom that it will bring to each and every one of us. God bless you. I went around to several of you and asked if you wanted to help us with the 7-step video. And at times in my previous sobrieties that always ended in a relapse, I didn't even really like to get up to get a medallion until one of my sponsors at the time checked me, and he says, it's not about you when you get the medallion. It's about showing, and don't, for any of you who said no to me, I'm not talking to you, so don't trip and get offended. That may be a character defect you can work on. But I often ask people the question, including myself, what do I do that's not about you? What do you do that's not about you? And what I've learned from my own mistakes and lessons in life, that it really comes down to character. So, Lord, I thank you for another day above ground and out of prison. Lord, I thank you for the people that are here. I thank you for the people that have come, the people that have left, the people that have stayed, the people that continue to strive to do better. And Lord, thank you for these 12 steps. They are clearly from you. They are all biblical. So please give me the words to say, none of me and all of you, that we may learn something tonight from the literature that you've made available for stubborn people like us. Have your way here tonight. In your name we pray, amen. Amen. So, a quick recap, and you'll hear it in the literature, is the fact that the first step says, we admitted. See, we learn that we need help to admit things. Last week when I went over step 5, it's the second time you'll see the word admit in the 12 steps. I believe it may be the last time. I don't have the greatest of memory. But if I'm honest with myself, I haven't done a great job of admitting things through the entirety of my life. Things were brought to my attention. I knew I was wrong. I didn't want to admit that I was wrong. That's why the 10th step says when we were wrong, not if we're going to be wrong. When we're going to be wrong, we need to promptly admit it. But we're not quite at the 10th step now. But getting back to the first step, it says we admitted we were powerless. You would think for a guy that's been through 11 treatments that after the second or third or fourth treatment, I should pretty much know by now that I'm powerless if I pick up drugs or alcohol or something that I'm addicted to, and my lives had become unmanageable. I don't think any of us would have really walked in to a treatment center or a detox or an AA meeting or an NA meeting, GA meeting or a Serenity Village meeting. They're all the same. If our lives were extremely manageable. So the first step, we have to admit that, and I've been using this visual of the main floor here as kind of a first step. Because in this first step, there's so much that's gone on. I got problems over here. I got unmanageability over there. I got family issues. I got health issues. I got legal consequences. I've got integrity issues. I've got manipulative issues. All this unmanageability is masking up really and canvassing this floor here. And it's so much for me to deal with at once. But I want to tackle it all at once in my first day of sobriety. And that's so unrealistic. And that's why they teach us it's progress, not perfection. So, I mean, even if I was to look at family alone or health or financial or integrity or legal consequences or workplace consequences, whatever they may be, it's just too much. But that is truly, so I have to take a step out of it, as I said last week, and really admit, as I look at it for what it is from a different perspective, in a different view, that this is extremely unmanageable. And how in the world am I going to fix it? And then I have to be honest with myself. Have I really ever done a good job fixing things? Maybe for a season, but there was no longevity with it. So I take a step out of the unmanageability and I look at it and I say, I truly have to, when I look at what's going on with my family, with my finances, with my work, with my legal, with my integrity, how can I not admit with this new view, taking the first step, that it is extremely unmanageable? So what caused my unmanageability? Now the first step is the only step that really targets our addiction. It's the what. The what is addiction. That's what you have to admit you're powerless over. But other than that, from this point on, it's not really, it goes into the why of the what of being addiction. But when I can look at it from this perspective, I mean, I have to be, and I am nuts. I know that. I still am. But that's something that I love about myself. I don't want to be normal. But the powerlessness is what caused the unmanageability. And the more years that I have worked the steps, not just solely around crack or heroin or alcohol, I'm powerless over people, places, and things. I can't control you. I can't control how you feel, how you don't feel, what you say, what you don't say. So I had to get to a point in my life that I'm powerless over other people too. I'm powerless over some of those meetings I had today, and one that was supposed to be 5 minutes less, an hour and a half, and all those different. So the more I try to control, the more unmanageable my life becomes. But it doesn't stop there. So now I go to the second step. And the second step, now that I've admitted, now if I haven't admitted these things, I shouldn't even work the second step. But the second step says, we came to believe. We hear it in the room say that first you got to show up. You came. And then if you quit doing dope, drinking, and whatever your deal was for a while, eventually the fog clears and you come to. And a lot of times when we come to, we don't like what we see or feel. So we have to remind ourselves, because truly, once you come to and detox and clarity comes on you, you want to run back to the unmanageability, because the unmanageability is comfortable. The drugs are comfortable. With the drugs, I didn't have to feel. But now I'm here on step 2 and I came to. I'm not under the influence anymore. I'm looking at the reality now again of my unmanageability, and then I look at you. Some of you I know from before. Some of you I've seen on the street. Some of you I got high with. I don't think, well, yeah, that knucklehead right there. my belief starts when I look at another addict or alcoholic and say that they are sober. How is that possible? Again, God works through people. So I come to believe that a power, now I'm not so sure about that power. I know drugs are cunning, baffling, and powerful. I'm not so sure about this God thing. But it doesn't ask me to really look at the God thing as long as that power isn't me. Now, if I remind myself in step 1 that my life is a mess, and if I was that powerful, it wouldn't be a mess. If I was managing things, so I come back to step 2, and I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. As long as that power at this point isn't me and my willpower, I can continue to progress in working the steps. Now, here's where we mess up, and this is why so many of us tonight are in a hurry to recover. Because we think the unmanageability is only in external things. The family, the finances, the workplace, the legal issues. The insanity is in between our 2 ears. But that's why I had to go to 11 treatments, because once I got out of treatment, I tried to fix everything and manage it in my own power, and I was still insane. And I'm going to touch that a little bit later. So I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Step 3 says I made a decision. I get the privilege of speaking in front of all programs tomorrow morning down at Teen Challenge. It's their last all-program chapel of the summer, and what an honor that is to go back where it all began. But I mean, there's something about a decision. I have to remind myself that up until this point, my decisions that I have made in my life haven't resulted in very good things. I don't know how to make a decision. That's why it says we made a decision. I needed help making a decision to turn my will and my life over to something that I didn't understand. But if I remind myself that I saw a power working in you, because I know you're dope fiend like me, that you made this decision, and I should probably make this decision, and the decision that the program is asking me to make doesn't have to it tells me right there that I don't have to fully understand who God is. But I need to know that up until now, I thought I made decisions, but I'd go against the decisions I made, and I lived my life in limbo, so I needed the power of the we, where God is working, to help me make that decision, to turn my will. The will is your internal being. Your thoughts, your feelings. And I said this last week, the 12th step doesn't say practice these feelings in all your affairs. Yes, I need to learn how to process my feelings, but I have to live by principle. I have to live by principle. So, my will and my life. Turning my life over to the care of God means that I have to be active in service. I have to do what I don't want to do so I can do what I want to do. So I needed the we to show me where I should serve, because I always take the easy way out. I'll do the least and expect the most. So I needed the we of the program to show me how to serve over to the care of God. Now, this is where a lot of people get tripped up. They don't want to turn their will and their life over to the care of God because they don't understand God, but then I would ask you, you turn your will and your life over to the care of heroin. You turn your will and your life over to the care of alcohol, gambling, pornography, anger, fear, anxiety. And did you really understand it? So I often say this as I go to jails and treatment centers and prisons to speak. Since you're here, take advantage of it. What do you got to lose? Well, I turned my life over to the care, will and life over to the care of crack, and I had a lot to lose, but I still did it. So what I've learned is, this is the first step that I can truly take that has the same magnitude, step 3, as my unmanageability down there on the main floor. Because with God, there are no limits. So now I'm on a different platform. Second step was a small step. First step, even though it was a real big step, emotionally and mentally, but I had to keep moving. Now I'm on the third step, because with God, the possibilities are endless. With God, people have taught me that with man, this is impossible. Because I had a lot of impossible situations in front of me from what was going on down there on the floor. But someone told me, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. So I've learned that with God, there are no limits. And since I've made that decision and haven't decided not to do it over the last several years, I've learned that it's just endless. It's totally endless. But within that decision, there's still, you see, one thing we have to realize about ourselves, we may be bad, but we're not all bad. We may have made some mistakes, but we're not a mistake. We may have failed, but we're not failures. See, that's where you really begin to believe that God. But somewhere in this third step, and somewhere in my mind, body, and spirit, there's some hardening going on. So within the platform that God has now given me, the opportunity that God has given me, I have to continue to work the steps. So yes, there are areas of my life that I'm good, I'm gifted, and I'm kind, but there also are areas that I'm mean, I'm cruel, I'm angry, I'm fearful. It's not the whole platform, not the whole person that God has created. So within this platform, I have to take a step forward. Now you notice, within this step, there are guardrails. This is God helping me that I made my decision to turn my will and my life over, and this is my sponsor. Because I am not very good at taking a look at myself. I have ran for myself at that particular time for 35 years. So I needed God and my sponsor to help me dig below the surface to the root cause, identifying what am I afraid of and who am I angry with. And when I started looking at just those two categories in the big book, it was like a floodgate. Now, here's where people trip. Well, how am I supposed to remember everything? You're not supposed to. You're not just supposed to do 1 4-step. In time, God will reveal more to you. But what happens is, I made a searching and fearless moral inventory. So that was hard for me because I don't like to search for anything but dope. But I had to search what is the root of this resentment and these fears. And fearless, well, one of the things I'm trying to identify in the 4-step is my fear issue. So now you're asking me to be fearless, but you're also asking me to write down my fears? That seems a little counterproductive. That's why I need the sponsor and I need God. So last week we talked about the 5th step. In the 5th step, it says admitted to God, to yourselves. Now again, I said it earlier. The second time you hear the word admit in the steps. So I'm getting a little better 5 steps down the road at admitting things. With the help of God and the help of my sponsor and the help of the we of the program. So we admitted to God. God already knows. He's God. To ourselves, we already know what we did. But we were able to really identify what it really was in the 4th step, because when you write it down, it's not inside of you and you can see it for what it is. Have you ever been angry about something and someone tells you to journal and you write down, and when you look at it on pen and paper, you're like, this is ridiculous. But when it's festering inside of you, it's consuming you. So anything that's dark always dies in the light of exposure, the Bible says. So here I am on step 5, and God knows, I know, I got a better knowing after writing it down in 4, but the person that I'm going to be intimate with doesn't know, being my sponsor, my pastor, or whoever I'm giving my 5th step. That's what scares me. Because I think they're going to run out of the room once I tell them, if I actually will. Trust me, I've done 5th steps and lied the whole way through. Who lost in that? I did. So the vulnerability and transparency comes in multiple facets here. The first thing that you get victory on is you're actually telling on yourself. Admitting. So you're like taking a risk. Recovery is about taking risk. Again, I didn't have a problem taking risks on the street, but in these rooms I clam up. It makes no sense. I want to use my liquid courage. I don't like it. I deal with a lot of 12-step calls and relapses. Well, I was drunk. I wouldn't have said that if I wasn't drunk. I said, no, the liquid gave you the courage to say how you really feel. Now try to do that sober in your 5th step and you'll stay sober. So God knows, I know, and now I'm going to share with another person the exact. So I got to target it, But this week, we're dealing, as Andrew said in the video, we're dealing with the 6th step. Now I want you to look at the difference of my view here. Look at how far away I am from that unmanageability. Look at how far, I mean, wouldn't it be something if you just worked the 1st step and you had to live your whole life powerless and miserable? See, now I'm identifying the why behind the what of my addiction, but the 6th step, now I got a different view. I'm like, man, God's doing something there when I made that decision. I got a new friend from the 5th step. He didn't run out of the room and say I was crazy. He said, I'm just as crazy as you are. Let's get together for coffee. And there's camaraderie and there's fellowship. So the 6th step says, it really comes, we're entirely ready. See, I'm ready now. Some of you guys have never gotten to this point. And that's okay up until this point. It's time for you to do this. See, the program says I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, but my pastor says I'm sick of me. I'm sick of being angry. I'm sick of these fears. I told you I'm sick of it, but I still feel it because these things are bigger than me. Now that I'm at the 6th step, I'm ready. I'm ready to deal with these things for the first time in my life, because if I don't deal with them, they will continue to deal with me. And I'm actually, it's kind of embarrassing at 35, 36, 37 to be an individual, a grown man with little boy issues. As when I walk in the room, people says, there's Jeff, we better deal with him. That's what's my life. See, I become entirely ready to have God, like they said in the video. Not, Eric said it, not me. If I could have done it, I would have done it, because I don't want to feel this way. To have God remove these defects of character. Addiction, when you're exposed to how to recover, if you don't take the steps necessary to recover and you don't get a sponsor, it is a character issue. It's a lack of character. It's a lack of integrity. It's a lack of drive. And the 6th step doesn't say anything besides becoming ready. You're becoming ready to identify and target the things that you wrote down in the 4th step. The things you admitted to yourself, to God and another human being, the 5th step. But when it comes to God, I want to hit this quick. Because even though God knows this is how you feel and this is what you did, there's something to be said when you admit it to Him. Because then He knows you're taking ownership of it. And it doesn't say in the 4th step the exact nature of their wrongs. Quit blaming people on how your life ended up. Because I know kids that lived in the same house with the same parents that ended up in 2 different situations. So what it is now on the 6th step is that I've just got to become ready. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Because a guy like me has and really had a lot of character defects. You hear it said that talent without character is wasted. I'd start companies, work, and do this, do that, and then my talent took me places that my character couldn't sustain me. So I'd get out of treatment or jail and go work for a company and size up the president or owner saying, I know better than you. But the problem was, my owner would always show up to work the next day and I might be in the dope house. Character. You may have the talent, but the character is in question. It says in AA 12 and 12, it says, this is the step that separates the men from the boys, the girls from the women. This is where you really want to target what it is that about your character that God needs to help you with and remove. It says, so declared a well-loved clergyman who happens to be one of AA's greatest friends. He goes on to explain that any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly step 6 on all his faults without any reservations. Have you ever thought that your reservations may be a character defect? Some of us have reservations. And I don't think there's anything wrong or abnormal with having reservations. Some of you are saying, well, does this mean I get to be sober the rest of my life? Does this mean I got to go to AA meetings for the rest of my life? Does this mean that I can't act out like I once did even if I'm not drunk? Because I like to do that kind of stuff. I like it even when I wasn't drunk. See, reservations you can also ask God to remove. We don't want to do that. We like our little secret reservations because nobody else knows about them but us. We're good actors, as it addresses in pages 60 to 63 in the big book. We're good actors. But when you get in a room like this, acting doesn't cut it. You hear it said that you cannot con a con. There's a lot of cons in here. So God loves you enough to put you in a room with people that are just like you. People that are trying to, and it goes on to say, without any reservations, whatever He has indeed come a long way spiritually, and therefore entitled to be called a man who is sincerely trying to grow. Now this is AA, I'm not reading out of the Bible here. Trying to grow in the image and likeness of his own Creator. I'm grateful that they wrote these tools for us that are stubborn, that are mad at God, where they give us a little wiggle room to figure this out. But there is enough. Steve reads it. He's been sober how many years now? 16 years. Probably been free for 3 of those 16 years. There's a big difference between being sober and free. So that tells me all along, it took 13 years to you to get free. Thank God you didn't drink. But it goes on to say, of course, the often disputed question of whether God can and will under certain conditions. See, that would be a reservation. And it takes time to really believe that he can and will. But a lot of times we're asking him to take something that we're holding on to. God isn't going to rip it out of your hand. You literally have to let it go. It goes on to say, remove defects of character will be answered in a prompt and affirmed by almost... See, there's too much evidence in this room that he will do it. How many people have been sober over here? Raise your hands. Evidence. Some of these people are extremely sick like me. See, so God gives you evidence, and Hebrews 12 tackles that by, since you are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, like I said, the we of the program. So anybody will tell you, yeah, it does work, but why aren't you working it? It's a reservation. You don't really believe that it will work. But why not give it a try? Why not let somebody guide you like those handrails up there? It says, my own willpower just wouldn't work on alcohol. How many days did you wake up and say you weren't going to drink and you drank anyway? You weren't going to use and you used anyway. See, we know willpower will not work. And it won't work. I don't want to be afraid anymore. So I'm going to exercise my willpower to banish my fear. It won't work. It's bigger than you, just like our addiction. But check out what it says. Change of scene. Best efforts of family, friends, doctors, clergymen got no place with my alcoholism. I've told you when I went to Hazelden and then they set me up with a psychiatrist and my insurance had ran out back in the day. So I paid the guy, which I'm sure it's a lot more expensive in today's times, but at that time it was $150 an hour. I mean, I paid the guy $150 an hour cash to lie to him. I mean, why even go? I ask myself all the question, which is a character issue. Why do you come in my office and ask for advice that you know you're not going to follow? It's a character to waste somebody's time like that. It's a character issue. And it says, now AAs have become entirely ready to have God remove the mania for alcohol from them. See, we want God to take the things, the what being the addiction, but we're not so sure about the whys. And that's the character, that's the fear, that's the resentment. But to check it out, I mean, and God has proceeded to do exactly that. I mean, if God could take a pill addict away from the pill like me, he can take my fear too. He can take my resentments and my manipulation and my lying, as you heard in that video. See, but why is it that we won't become entirely ready to allow him to remove it? Because we kind of like it, and the literature will address that. But I mean, how many people has he done that for? Raise your hands. The rest of you are drunk right now? I mean, who's sober today? Raise your hand. So that's a miracle. That is a miracle. Let's give God a hand. So I have to remind the devil in my flesh that if God could do that, remove the desire to get high, he can take care of this other stuff too. Having been granted perfect relief from alcohol, why then shouldn't we be able to achieve the same means of a perfect release from every other difficulty or defect? He asks us only that we try our best. We know how to progress in building our character. It's all about building character. The only way you will know if a person's got character is how time. Anybody can say anything for a season. Any of us can do anything for a season. It's easy to give God everything when you got nothing. But what do you do when God starts to reestablish you? What if you go to court today and they didn't throw you in prison? And you praised him before court, you asked him before court, you praised him after court, but tonight you're not really thinking about it. That was me. And that's a character issue. I mean, I've been doing this for 13, 14 years, and if you're about God, people do you like they do God. They use God as a bail bondsman. They call God just like they call your sponsor, only when you're in trouble. See, I love it with Bishop Earl. I was at dinner with the Greenwoods last night, and I was telling her about what he said to a guy when he goes to Oak Park Heights on Christmas. And I run into this all the time. He walked into the prison, and he said, the guy said, oh my God, and the other inmates were there, and he says, there's my pastor. And he was talking about Bishop Earl, and Bishop Earl went up, and it probably wasn't easy for Bishop Earl to do it. He says, I'm not your pastor. Because if I was, you wouldn't be in here. Why is it that we always ask what to do after we did it? That's a character issue. It's a character issue that we ask what to do now after we've already done something and gotten in a pinch. It says, so step 6, we're entirely to have God remove our defects of character, is AA's way of stating the best possible attitude one can take in order to make a beginning of a lifetime job. This isn't going to happen overnight. This does not mean we expect all of our character defects to be lifted out of the drive as the drive to drink. I mean, see, we're so addicted to instant gratification, so that's why there's a 10th step. I mean, just because God removed the majority of my fears, when fear shows back up, I know that it doesn't feel good because it's already been removed, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to visit you. You have a choice at the time that it visits you if you're going to welcome it in. Character. That's a character issue. Check out what it says here. It's so important that this is a lifetime job. When I do something that I know I shouldn't do, it affects me if I say something that I shouldn't say to him because I'm angry or ornery. I got to go back and make that right. It doesn't sit right with me. But back in the day, it was just a blink of an eye. It was another day. I didn't care who was in my path. I'd bulldoze right over him. But what it says here, this does not mean we expect all of our character defects to be livid and drive to drink was. A few of them may be, but most of them we shall have to be content with and be patient improvement. Just know, sometimes you just got to really bank on that awareness is victory. I just lied, I'm aware of it. I just was manipulative. I'm full of fear today and I'm aware of it. It doesn't feel right. So I got to talk about it with somebody. It says self-righteous anger also can be enjoyable. In a perverse way, we can actually take satisfaction from the fact that the many people annoy us, for it brings us a comfortable feeling of superiority. So a lot of times when we're offended or angry, we feel as if we're better than the person that we're angry with, so we feel that we're superior to them. And a lot of times we never ask for clarification because we'd rather stay angry, because when we come to our own conclusions, now, you almost have to giggle at this. Have we been good at conclusions? So I'm angry about something that I don't even know is a reality, but I'm not going to talk to you about it because I want to remain superior to you. That's a character issue. That's something that God needs to remove. And check out what it says here. Gossip. I mean, you got to know about people that gossip, man. They're going to gossip about you as soon as you leave them. I don't want to be around. People don't gossip around me. You know, the big book teaches us, I'll talk about somebody that I'm concerned about, but that's not gossip. Check out what it says. Gossip barbed with our anger, a polite form of murder by character assassination, has its satisfactions for us too. I mean, oftentimes, if you could assassinate somebody with your thoughts about them, you'd be in prison. And the funny thing about that is we all have learned from people's stories, is back in the day, and I think it happened with me once when I was working a 4-step on a resentment, my sponsor drove me over to the person's house that I was resentful about at midnight. All the lights were off in the house. I'm up angry and they're sleeping like a baby. Who's losing? Again, I always question my level of intelligence. I mean, I had to look at that. I mean, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed here the way I've been living my life. But we like to assassinate people's character. We like to feel better and hold on and harbor these self-righteous anger. And 99 out of 100 times, it's not even justified. And even if it is, why hold on to it? Why even hold on to it? Yeah, the Bible says, He said, you can be angry, just when you're angry, don't sin. And don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. That's what it says in the Word. But I love it what it says here next. We live in a world riddled with envy. God, there's a lot of haters out there. I don't know why they just don't glean up to somebody that's got more than them and ask. I mean, when I'm around greatness, I don't envy them. I said, how did you get to where you are? Teach me. I don't say, how did you get that car? Where did you get that? How do you own all this? What's going on? There must be more than meets the eye. I mean, envy I see a lot in these rooms. Men on men envy. Check out what it says. To a greater or less degree, everybody is infected with it, not affected. With envy, you're not just affected, you're infected. It says, from this defect, we must surely get warped. I mean, some of the stuff that comes out of people's mouths. How did you come up with that conclusion? And it's teaching us these are character defects that we all have. Yet definite satisfaction. Else why would we consume such great amounts of wishing for something we have not, rather than working for it? Everything I have, I've worked for. And I work all day, every day. And anybody that I've seen do great things, they all work for it. I don't say, oh my God, I just want to be like you, but I want it handed to me. No. You got to work for it. And my dad taught me a long time ago, I mean, if you don't have to work for it, it isn't going to last. And I'm tired of getting handouts. I want handouts. So check out. Or angrily looking for attributes we shall never have. Quit trying to be like somebody else. Just be who God created you to be. God didn't make you to be like me or Steve's not like... You are who you are, and embrace it. But that's what the big book's saying. And either people want to be like somebody or they envy them, they talk smack about them. Like, well, I've been doing this long. I mean, what did I do to you to cause you to call? I mean, I didn't even talk to you. You have to learn when a person talks about another person, they're really talking about themselves. And God has really cleared that out over the years, which I'm extremely grateful for, but you always see it show up in the rooms. But it says, why do you want something that you'll never have instead of adjusting to the fact and accepting it? I mean, I'm here to tell you, these people that you envy, if you were to walk in their shoes and live the life that they do and work like they work, you don't want to do that. So just be you with what God has entrusted you to have. Work what you have and God will give you more. I mean, it's straight truth. It says, consider too our talents for procrastination. I'll get a sponsor. We're on the 6th week. Have you gotten a sponsor? I've been doing this too long to know that I end up in the dope house and wish I would have. End up in the backseat of the cop car in a jail cell, in a detox center, in a treatment center. End up on the streets. So I don't want to procrastinate. I never procrastinated to get a hit of crack. Oh, I really could use a hit. Well, I'll wait a couple hours. But we procrastinate in our programs. It's a character issue, which is sloth in 5 syllables. Nearly anyone could submit to a good list of such defects as these. Few of us would seriously think of giving them up, at least until they cause excessive misery. You know what I say about misery? Misery doesn't love company, it demands company. Of an individual rooted in drooling with envy and anger, they're going to make sure that you're miserable too. But you have a choice. My life, I said it was on the Facebook today, I said, life is too short to always want to be somewhere else than where you actually are. That's all character stuff. I mean, if you did drugs like I did, I'd be grateful to be in this church tonight. We go to the county jails and the prisons, they would trade with you in a heartbeat. We'll go, I'll do it again tonight. I'll do it every time I see them. I believe they're here. Jean and Sue, I want you to stand up. Gina's in the grave tonight, even though she's in heaven. She would trade seats with you to live her life. Let's give them a hand. You don't think her parents are wishing they couldn't have walked their daughter down the aisle? Seeing her grandbabies, that was all robbed from them. Not just from Gina. It was robbed from her parents. And Gina would want me to, I know Gina better than you know Gina. Gina would want me to say this to you tonight. Wake up. Don't procrastinate. Because my dad doesn't get to walk me down the aisle. My mom and dad don't get to be in the hospital when I gave birth to my first child. But we think that will never happen to us. It's arrogant, and it's a character issue. And check out what it says here. I mean, it's just so plain to me what it says. It says, but even these people, if they construct a list of still milder defects, would be obliged to admit that they'd prefer to hang on to some of them. Therefore, it seems plain that few of us can quickly or easily become ready to aim at spiritual and moral perfection. We want to settle for only as much as will get us by. The big book says half measures. AA teaches us that half measures avail us nothing. According to the various and sundry, it is what will get us by. I mean, it doesn't work. I mean, why are you envying somebody that's living in abundance when you're not willing to do the work? If you want what they have, do what they do. And the majority of humble people that have an abundant life in every area will show you how to do it. But another character issue is we won't listen. We want to do it our way. We want to take shortcuts. They're nothing but set. And when I say we, I'm talking about me back in the day. I'm grateful that, I didn't just, there I was living a life in addiction, just getting by. But I didn't say, oh, hey, just give me enough dope to get by. I mean, depending on the day, of course, and my means. But I always wanted abundance. And I worked for it. You know what I say? If you're lazy in your recovery, you'll get put to work in your relapse. So we're dealing with character issues here. And it says, so the difference between the boys and the men is the difference between striving for self-determined. I know what to do. I know how to do this. That self-determined. Again, level of intelligence. How has it worked thus far? Self-determined, objective, and for the perfect objective, which is of God. Many of us will once ask, how can we accept the entire implication of step 6? Why? That is perfection. This sounds like a hard question, but practically speaking, it isn't. Only step 1, where we made 100% admission we were powerless over alcohol, can be practiced with absolute perfection. And if you still have a reservation in step 1, you're going to relapse. It will happen. How many people think that's true? Raise your hands. That's why it says you have to work this at 100% admission. It says, maybe I can postpone dealing with some of my problems indefinitely. Of course, this won't do. Such bluffing of oneself will have to go the way of many in another pleasant rationalization. It's amazing what our minds can rationalize. That's a character defect. We can rationalize certain things. It says, at the very least, we shall have come to the grips with some of our worst character defects and take action towards their removal as quickly as we can. The moment we say no, never, our minds close against the grace of God. Including, I don't say that I won't get high again. I don't say that. Because I've said it before and I've gotten high. So when I say there's a possibility that I could get high tonight, I probably won't, because I'm admitting that there's a side of me that can get high. But I'm not feeding that side anymore. How many of you said they'd never going to get high again and got high? Coming out of treatment all rolling, holy rolling, I got this licked. It says delay is dangerous. See, I mean, we that's dealing with the character issue of procrastination. We can't delay this. And rebellion may be fatal. If you rebel against these principles, you could die. Check out what it says. This is the exact point at which we abandon our limited objectives and move towards God's will for us. We like to do stuff that limits us. We like to do stuff because we're in a hurry that boxes us in a corner. Some of us have a character defect. I'll say it. If you're emotional about, I'll say it like this. If you're emotional about your money, you'll always be broke. You need to be strategic about your money. I'm a generous person, and I say that with humility, but I don't waste money. So a lot of us excessively buy things, and it boxes us in, and something else comes along a week later that we can't do because we're excessive. Some of us even do that with rent. Boy, I would protect the roof over my head over a new pair of shoes when I already got 15 pairs. It's a character issue. It's a character issue. And NA, it works how and why. You're quiet tonight. I love you. God bless you. Hallelujah. It says, although some of us have not understood the critical importance of the 6th and 7th steps, I think why you're quiet is none of you have, well, that's wrong. A lot of us, have, including me up until the last time, have never worked these steps. You can't argue with the truth. That's why I love going into prisons, and they won't let me tell. I mean, I'm respectful of anybody's house, including a prison. If the chaplain in the prison says you can't talk about the Bible when you go talk to these guys, I don't talk about the Bible. But I talk about the Bible without telling them I'm talking about the Bible. But as soon as they find out it's the Bible, they don't agree with it. But before they found out it was the Bible, they were doing the head bow. Oh yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense. So what it's saying here is so important. Essential actions must be taken as we expect to make any significant and lasting changes in our lives. I'm tired of changing and changing back. I'm tired of changing and changing back. I'm tired of rebuilding and losing. I knew how to stay sober. I could have wrote a book on it for 60 days. I know how to get sober. I just didn't know how to stay sober. And that's because I didn't work the steps. So I want lasting changes. Anything I'm involved with now, I want some permanency to be involved with it. We cannot simply say, yes, God, I'm ready. Please remove my defects and go on to... You got to take a strong look at this stuff. If we gloss over the 6th and 7th steps and go to make our amends, we will only wind up owing more amends by repeating the same destructive patterns again. You really need... I love Will Kleiber. I have much respect for him. I know a lot of the men he works with in the 12 steps. He equips them to what an 8th and a 9th should really look like. I used to work the 9th step in my own level of understanding, and I would go to make the amends and say I'm sorry and then blame it on the dope. No, it wasn't the dope's fault. It's on me because I chose to pick up the dope. So you really have to take a look at this in a way because I don't want to... After a while with people like me, they don't want to hear I'm sorry. They don't want to hear it. And that's why you can't get out of treatment and go work a 9th step. Time heals. We want time, we want guidance. And what it's saying, it says this is a lifelong process, the 6th step, and it's just that, a process. We started the process by becoming entirely ready, and we will strive to increase our readiness throughout our lifetime. Our job is to become entirely ready and to open our hearts and minds to a deep internal changes that can only be brought about by a presence of a loving God. So I taught this on Sunday. God moved on Sunday night. That was insane. But the thing is that you got to know your responsibility versus God's responsibility. Your responsibility and my responsibility just stated that my responsibility resides in being entirely ready and willing and open. God's responsibility is to remove it. And it's up to God and when He does that. Sometimes my anger that wasn't immediately removed back in the day kept me going to God. And if He would have removed it right away, I would have went on my merry way. Don't ever question how God does stuff. You can question it, but God will never harm you. And whoever has harmed you in your life, that wasn't God. God gives each and every one of us free will. That's how we got in the jams we're in. So we can't fault God for that, you know. There are some questions I will ask out of respect when I get to meet Him face to face. But in the end of the day, I just got to trust Him. Because I've trusted things that almost killed me. It says, we are sick and tired of being the people we have been. But the feeling compels us to change and grow. We want to be different than we've been in the past. And it's not just about putting the plug in the jug. We got to change. And the good news, we already are. See, Dalton, when I told you earlier I was thinking about you. See, a lot of times when you don't think you're changing, you actually are. But when you think you're all that in a bag of chips, you're the same person that you were in the bar. I love hearing Dalton in group. He says, he's just real and he's authentic and he's raw. And I love the entire group because you know what? A lot of times when you're in it, you don't see it, but it goes both ways. When you're doing good, you don't see it. You need other people to point it out to you. But also when you're doing bad, you don't see it either. That's why the word we is here. We need each other, but it goes on to say, and in fact, each and every one of us is doing good. We're here. I don't know about you, but it took a minute to get here. So say, I'm doing good. And make sure you say it with humility. We must do, rather than try to exert power or control over our defects, is to step out of the way and allow a loving God to do the work in our lives. One part of this process involves being responsible for our behavior. Stronach teaches us all the time. Addicts don't want to take responsibility. Own it so you can disown it. See, the thing that I often see in people's lives is the fact that a lot of times we get in the way of God. And we're supposed to step back and let him drive. And typically God uses people, obviously. It says on a spiritual foundation we lay the principles of commitment. Boy, commitment's a tough one when it comes to character. People say one thing and do another. Perseverance as we work the sixth step. We need the willingness to make a commitment to pursue our recovery despite our continued presence of character defects in our lives. We mustn't give up. Even if we think there is no changes taking place, we often blind to our own internal changes, just like I just said. But we can rest assured that what's happening inside of us is evident on the outside to others, just like I just said about Dalton. With the help of our sponsor, we write a list of those defects and focus on how they may manifest themselves in our lives. Our character defects are basic human traits that have been distorted out of a proportion of self-centeredness, causing enormous pain to us and those around us. When the pain of remaining the same becomes greater than the fear of change, we will surely let go. Basic text. Why ask for something before we are ready for it? It's because we're always in a hurry. See, you hear me say it all the time. God's already got his blessing prepared for you. He's preparing you for the blessing. But we won't wait. That's one of our character defects. We're not patient. So we go and get what we think we need, and we end up getting high. And it says, this would be asking for trouble. Well, we like trouble. That's another character defect. I love chaos. So many times, addicts have sought the rewards of hard work without the labor. We want something for nothing. I giggle often at ourselves. I giggle at people like us that go to treatment on a Rule 25 and then complain about taxes. You know, Bishop Jakes told me a story once. It was quite humorous. He has a program down there. Do you remember? I don't remember the name of it. The prison program where he gets guys out of prison. I forget the name. But he had, and he got it? Yep, that's it. Thank you. They just had a huge graduation. Well, one of his graduates got a job for the first time. He had done some serious time in prison. He called Bishop up back in the day when Bishop was more accessible, and he was so upset because he didn't know who this FICA guy was. And why was FICA taking all of his money? It says, many of us cling to our fears, doubts, self-loathing, and hatred because there are certain distorted security in familiar pain. I feel good when I got self-pity. It seems safer to embrace what we know than let go for the unknown. See, a lot of us have to unlearn some things before we begin to learn them. If we are not humble, we will become humiliated. If we are greedy, we will find that we are never satisfied. Before taking steps 4 and 5, we could indulge in fear, anger, dishonesty, or self-pity. Now, indulgence in these character defects clouds our ability to think logically. Selfishness becomes intolerable, destructive chain that ties us to our old bad habits. Our defects drain us of our time and energy. Think about how anger drains you. Think about how fear drains you. Think about how lying drains you. I mean, if you lie, you got to figure out, what did I say again? I got to remember what I said, because if I forget what I said. It says, eventually faith, humility, and acceptance replace pride and rebellion. We come to know ourselves. You hear me say it all the time. You got to get to know yourself so you can see yourself coming. It says, we find ourselves growing into a mature consciousness. It's very important that you know this principle. A lot of stuff that we do is coming from our unconscious. That's why you lie and you don't even know why you did. But when you work the steps, you become more conscious of these things. Like I said earlier, more aware of these things. And it's a maturity in your consciousness, as the literature says. We begin to feel better, but some of us aren't used to feeling better. So we want to go make ourselves feel worse. We begin to feel better as willingness grows into hope. Perhaps for the first time, we see a vision of our new life. With this insight, we put our willingness into action by moving to step 7, Ephesians 4, out of the Message. We need to change one thing, that's everything. But that's no life for you. If addiction was a life that was good for you, you would not be here. You learn Christ. My assumption is that you paid careful attention. Are you paying careful attention to what I'm teaching? Because it is available. It's on you if you pay attention to it. If I was you, like I did, and I will pay honor to the place that gave me my freedom, the God in that place. When I was at Teen Challenge, when I go to church, and this is my sheets. Raven asked me, how old are you? She goes, how do you come up with all these sermons? I said, let me show you. I go through them several times with several markers and several different colors of pens. I pay careful attention. When I go to listen to a pastor, I bring my notebook. When I was in treatment, I had a lot of highlighters. See, once you hear the information, you're accountable to what you heard, even though you weren't paying attention, because God made the information available to you. And then it's on you. Check this out. Write that down if you got a notebook. My assumption is that you have paid careful attention to Him and been well instructed. I've been well instructed, and I say this with humility. You're being well instructed tonight. Because it isn't my information, it's the information. This isn't my opinion on anything. I'm reading right from the book. Well instructed in the truth. See, a lot of us don't like the truth. Precisely as we have it in Jesus. And a lot of us, there's the Jesus thing. The antennas just went, psh. Why does he have to talk about Jesus? Why is Jesus that bad? I'm telling you, you're all good people, but Jesus is cool. He's so chill. He even had long hair. I'm a hippie guy, even though I look like a Marine. But he's not a bad guy. And because of him and what he's done, we're all here. Since then, we don't have to excuse ignorance. Again, you're accountable to what you've been taught. Everything. I do mean everything the Bible says, connected with the old way of life has to go. It's rotten through and through. Get rid of it. And then take on an entirely new way of life, a God-fashioned life, a life renewed from the inside, working into its conduct as God. See, a lot of us are trying to work good conduct, and we're being good people in our sobriety, but nothing inside has changed. And eventually what's in is going to come out. And what it says, check out inside, and working itself into your conduct as God accurately, God's always accurate, reproduces His character in you. When God removes your character defects, it makes room for His character to come in you. See, it's not a question about talent. There is so much talent in this room tonight. There are business owners. I don't care if you own a business. Don't tell me you used to own a business. You ain't own a business no more. That means nothing to me. But you still have the talent to own a business, to start a foundation, to lead people. See, there's no dispute on the room is full of talent, but unfortunately, with all due respect, it lacks character. And talent without character is wasted. God bless you.